Hey everyone, Jack here. Today we're going to do something a little different, and I want to share my screen because I want to talk through an important aspect of college admissions and mostly highlight tier 4 of college admissions, what I call your story. But before I get into that, I want to show you exactly why I want to talk through that. Here on my screen is some data, 2000 to 2022. These are acceptance rates at mostly Ivy League schools. We got Stanford, MIT, Chicago, Duke in there as well. You can see here, I'm just going to highlight a crazy example. Cornell in 2000 had a 30.9% acceptance rate. In 2022, that was close to 8%. Right? Across the board, you can see in 22 years how drastic of a change most of the elite schools in the country have gone through when it comes to admissions rates. Why am I bringing this up? Because I want to talk about Category 4 of admissions. 22 years ago, Category 4 of admissions probably wasn't that big of a deal. Now it is. Okay. As a reminder, the 4 main criteria that most admissions reps in the country at these schools that you see on this list, and really anywhere, are as follows. Number 1, your high school grades and the rigor of classes you take. Number 2, the second most important, standardized testing. Obviously, that comes with an asterisk these days, given that some schools are test optional, and if you apply to the California schools, they're test blind. But if you score well on your test, for the most part, it is still the second most important characteristic in admissions. It will help you drastically. Third, your college essay. I'm not going to talk about that today. But category number 4 is what I call your story. Now, it's often called extracurriculars or leadership activities or what do you do outside of school, right? But I call it your story because the average application gets reviewed for 8 minutes in this country. 8 minutes, 18 years of a student's life put into something that's going to get reviewed for 8 minutes. And especially when you see data like this that I have on my screen, right? Everyone who's applying to these schools has the grades and the test scores, and honestly, for the most part, probably has a pretty well-written essay. So when Cornell was a 30.9% acceptance rate, grades, test scores, essay, probably going to get in, right? If they align with the benchmarks. But now that's just the bar to even be considered. Right? Grades, test score, essay, okay, now we'll consider you, right? Because they've gone from 30.9 down to 8%. I just show you this because I think it's going to be important to highlight why I'm talking about what I'm going to talk about here for the next few minutes. So, when it comes to Category 4, this really is, when you're dealing with some of the most elite schools in the country, your time to shine as a student. This is where you need to stand out. Now, what makes an exceptional story? Well, you can look back in some of my previous videos where I talk about kind of laying that path, showing what you've done early in high school, what you're doing currently, and, oh, by the way, how that leads right into what you're going to do when you walk through the front door of college, right? Make that path clear. But then, right, you say, okay, I understand this, but what is that path? Like, how do I show that I'm, an interesting applicant who's going to benefit the college when I arrive? Well, first things first, I want to highlight my favorite book in this category, which is How to Be a High School Superstar. So you can see here, I've purchased this item a lot. I actually ship it to students in my program. And I have it right here. Fantastic book. I've actually met with Cal in person. He's amazing. And as an aside, I went through and found the book that I purchased in 2009 that changed my life, which is his second book ever written. And it literally has my highlights and notes in here. Pretty awesome. I just show you this because I never recommend things if I haven't personally vetted them. Cal is amazing. And this book really has to do with, in my opinion, Category 4, which is how to stand out. And he literally writes without burning out. His whole thing is he actually interviews students who don't actually have straight A's and still get into a school like a Stanford or a University of Virginia. And he says, you didn't even have straight A's. What did you do? And the whole obviously notion behind it is they had exceptional Category 4s. He doesn't call it Category 4. I do, obviously. But the point is, every student he interviews in here had an exceptional story. that basically got them into college. And actually, as he writes, he himself, Cal, had an exceptional story, which is why he ended up going to Dartmouth. Anyway, highly recommend it if you are interested. Now, in my program, here's how I walk all of my students through figuring out their exceptional category 4. And it is what I call the different is greater than difficult exercise. Right? When it comes to standing out, being unique in college admissions, in that category 4, your story, coming up with something that you might want to explore deeply that will help present an exceptional, unique, differentiating story. Different is often greater than difficult. Let me explain what I mean by this. Oftentimes I have students come to me and they say, Jack, should I take that 6th or 7th AP class? I say, well, maybe, but also talk to me. What else do you have going on? And when I dig deeper, I find out that really, I've seen this many times, they're academics. And I say, you know what? How about you don't take that 6th or 7th AP class? Let's stick with 4 or 5. That's good enough. And use that extra time that you would have to do studying for that 6th or 7th AP class, and let's work on category 4, because that's actually going to more efficiently help your application chances than adding yet another AP to your exceptional academics. Like, we're good there. We need to round out this application. And so then, of course, they say, okay, great. I like it. Now I have a little bit of extra time. What should I do? How should I stand out? And that is when I introduce them to the notion that when it comes to college admissions, standing out's important. And often, doing something a little unique, a little different that helps you stand out can actually be better in college admissions than just doing whatever is difficult, like taking that 6th or 7th AP. So we walk through this exercise. This is the exact exercise that's in my program. I'm showing you right now. I actually don't think I've ever done this where I just show something that's inside my program to the world, but honestly, I think it's really important these days, especially given this data. So I want to show you. And again, you can take this back to your high schooler and help them go through a similar exercise. I'm not going to read the entire worksheet. If you want, you can pause the video and read it as I scroll. But I'm going to summarize it. The goal is to help students identify something they're A, passionate about, and then B, something that if they heard that a teenager completed would be impressive, and then find the overlap. So I'm going to read through this at the bottom here. What are you passionate about? This is literally a project I have students do, and again, if you don't believe that, I'm actually going to show you the results of it in a second here. What are you passionate about? To determine, I like to utilize what Cal Newport dubs the Saturday morning test. Picture yourself in the middle of the school year. You wake up on a Saturday morning with the entire day in front of you. To make it more fun, let's say you have 0 homework to complete for the entire weekend. I've also added in here that you can't binge Netflix. And also recently I got the answer of sleep. And so I say, okay, you get your 8 or 9 hours and you're good, right? You have 100% free day. What would you do with your day? List anywhere between 3 and 10 items. So I have students do that. And they go through and they list 3 to 10 items, things they're passionate about. Now, second step, I say for a second now, forget about step number 1. We'll come back to that shortly. For step number 2, right, completely ignore step number 1. I want you to think outside the box and answer the following question. What things, if you heard that a 16 to 18-year-old accomplished, would you say to yourself, wow, that's a unique or impressive or different or just not something I hear that a typical 16 to 18-year-old does, right? Feel free to get creative here. Anything goes. And then I give some examples here, right, of how you can do that. And I actually take an example from this book about a student who really was interested in horseshoe crabs. That is right, horseshoe crabs. And guess what? Her interest in horseshoe crabs eventually is what gets her into college because she dives deep in that area. But we're not there yet, right? My students are figuring it out. And so I say, just list super impressive, cool, different, fun things. That's it. Don't think about the first question. Now, in step 3, when you have your list of things you're passionate about and you have your super impressive, cool, fun, different things, now let's try to find an overlap. Can you meld these together and find one single thing that you're actually super passionate about and that you might be able to put together in a format that is super impressive for colleges, right? That's the goal. I'm just going to give an example here. I had one student after doing this who was really into fantasy football. And then in his super impressive, fun, different things, it was like runs a website or blog. And I said, you know what? Put those together. For 2 years throughout high school, sophomore, junior year, into senior year, when you post your fantasy football lineups and do all of this crazy math to post them, get them out into the world in a blog or website form. He did it, right? Spent 2.5 years doing it, and you can imagine when it came time to college admissions, this was unique, this was interesting, and he had the proof to back it up that he was doing it for a while. So that's just one example, right? And then I say here, you can reach out to your family, ask them to help you accomplish this. You just need to find one overlapping thing that you can work on for ideally multiple years, which is again why I have my students do this early when joining my program, whether they're freshmen or sophomores, or at the latest early junior year. This different is greater than difficult task takes time. So I'm going to highlight in a second here. All right. So then, obviously, they go through, and the goal is to find an overlap. All right. Find your 1 or 2 favorites. So there you go. That's the project. Now, if you're saying, well, that's great, Jack. Does this actually work? I've got something to show you. This is the exact, I had to go back because she's actually a senior now, but this is one of my students currently in my program who just pressed submit on her college applications, and this is what she wrote after completing this, and I'm really just going to highlight this. My mom and I have come up with a great project idea that involves sending pictures and videos of experiences to people in assisted care so they can still enjoy life, even though they may not be able to physically go out. We have a spreadsheet of close nursing homes, and slowly, when we have time, we'll try our best to make this project work. That was her different is greater than difficult project. Now, here are the results. Over the course of the last year, my student, Nicole, has gone through, and I'm going to move my screen here so you can see this. Recently, she presented at a nursing home the Light of Your Life project. Presented it, stood up, and spoke in front of an entire nursing home and made an incredible video that highlights the culmination of this project. And here's the best part. It was something she was passionate about. It gave back to the community. And yes, as an aside, I can guarantee this is going to help her in Category 4 of admissions. So that's where I wanted to leave it today. Nicole obviously did an incredible job. I wanted to show you this because hopefully this helps you take this back to your high schooler and see if they too might be able to go through their own different is greater than difficult project. If you have a high school freshman or sophomore or junior, start now. I will tell you the key to the different is greater than difficult project, as you can see from Nicole here, right? Look at this presentation. She stood up in front of this. She has a poster. She had a 15-minute video she walked through. It took time. Also on that front, when it takes time, it shows college admissions you're actually serious about this and not something you've just done at the last second to help your college applications. I think if you ask Nicole, she will be honest and tell you she actually genuinely wanted to do this. And by the way, as an aside, yes, it's going to help her college applications, which she just submitted a couple days ago. All right, so that's it. I hope this helps. If you like more videos like this, like the video, click subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one.